What is going on, YouTube people? New York Cards and Comics here. Still struggling through. We are on the rebound. The voice might not sound like it, but I am feeling better. We'll see if the voice can hold up through recording. Took Monday off. But as I have been saying, the show must go on. Today, talking baseball. Spring training is basically upon us. Pitchers and catchers have reported. I believe we have actual live games late this week or early next week. That means it is silly season for guys that have never appeared in a Major League Baseball game. Prospect season is upon us. And I just kind of wanted to do a little bit of a history lesson on this stuff to remind people that your best window to sell some of these guys might be in the next 30 to 45 days. The main two players I want to focus on today are one Jackson Holliday and one Jackson Chourio, the two hottest names in the baseball prospect landscape. Still unsure at this time, if they will make the major league roster. I think Chourio is probably a shoo-in because he already signed his contract. Holliday, I think, probably ends up making it, but that is less sure. Regardless, you could see their prices have been building throughout the offseason. Chourio, a little more so. Chourio was floating around in the, let's call it $500 to $600 range. Spring in the late summer, started climbing up. And both these guys really following the same pattern as the year went on last year. Their stock rose. Chourio's went back down a little bit as we entered the offseason. Holliday just did not sell as frequently, so we have less data to go on there. Chourio levels out at around the $500 to $600 mark in the fall and winter, and then starts to rise back up as the season approaches. And you can see Holliday was kind of doing the same thing. Got a weird sell here, but then our last one is back on the upswing again. I know Chourio specifically and Holliday both were very trendy names at some of my recent local shows in regards to who people were looking for. If one of these guys starts off hot in spring and their prices go nuclear, which is not out of the realm of possibility, this is one of those situations where don't get cute probably applies, and it might be a good exit strategy if you got in cheaper on their cards back in here, and you're able to make a pretty decent profit off of it. Even if on Chourio, you had a little bit longer runway to buy. Holliday, not as much. But like I said, if one of these guys comes out and hits a couple home runs in a couple days in a spring training game, history has shown us prices may spike. If that happens, that might actually be your best opportunity to exit. I wanted to look at some past players and kind of how their stuff performed. First up, let's talk Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt started the 2022 season with Kansas City. You can see the lead up here, late 2021 into 2022, just constantly building. As spring training closed, it was more and more likely he was going to make the team. He makes the team, season starts, and then immediately drops off. Now remember, Witt had a pretty good rookie year. Julio Rodriguez obviously won Rookie of the Year, but Witt was perfectly fine. His stuff obviously dropped off a ton. Now, you could chalk some of this up to, 2022 was kind of the correction year for the sports card market. Perfectly fair. Basically stayed flat throughout the season. And then we get to early 2023 into the offseason. He got a little spike up and then back down as the season went on, and then actually went up as the season went on, because the 2023 season, he was absolutely fantastic. He had a great year last year. He was great. Put up big numbers all across the board. One of the top fantasy picks in fantasy baseball coming into this upcoming season. And his prices reflected that once the season started. You can see here, let's go back to late April. He was going for $730 in a PSA 10. Got all the way down to a low point of $450 Here's a 600. And then closed out the season. Where's the end of the season at? Right here in September. At around almost 800. And has slowly crept up. It's kind of sat around that 800 mark in the offseason as we get ready to start a new season here. So once again, the peak of his market was right when the season started. Climbed, season started, expectations meet reality, as we always talk about a lot, and the prices fell. Let's look at one Mr. Julio Rodriguez, another one. Started the season with the club. This was a little bit in question, if you remember. It was not a lock that he was going to make the team out of spring training, but he had a great spring training, ended up making the team. You could see as the 2021 to 2022 offseason, he climbed. We get to the season starting. He is almost at peak value. His PSA 10, this is all first Bowman autos, by the way, went for about $2,400, a little less than $2,400. Season starts, immediately drops. Levels back out, sitting just above 2K. Remember, Julio, his rookie year, was fantastic from start to finish. He put up a monster season. Yes, there are a few outlier sales here. 3K, another one there at 2.5. Here's the high point of where this is where he was declared to be coming up. And you draw a line across there. Most of the sales are below that number. All throughout the season. Were there a couple above that? Yes. But remember, it took him playing fantastically just to maintain his price. Once the season ended, we moved into the offseason. He dipped out a little bit and then built back up to the season starting, moved into spring training. And then remember, last year he had a slow start to the year. His prices dipped quite a bit in season, came back up as he finished the year strong, and then went right back down again, where right now he's sitting at about $1,100, which is about where he was going middle of the season in 2023. So a real roller coaster ride for one Mr. Julio Rodriguez. So once again, that peak of the excitement around making the team, the call up, oh my God, he's going to make it, was here. And him having a fantastic season in 2022 barely kept him above that line. Yes, there was a couple sales outside of that, but most were below that $2,400-ish mark. Let's look at another player. Ellie Day La Cruz. This one's a little different. Ellie got called up middle of the season. He was having a very good minor league season. His prices started to build leading up to the call-up. I believe he got called up right around in here. So there was some build-up to it. He jumped, but once again, back in the end of the offseason and through the beginning of spring training, basically flat because he had no hype on him heading into the season. His hype started building while he was in the minors. It built, he got called up. Now, he had an electric first couple of weeks. He was just on absolute fire. His card prices kept going, eventually topped out, came back down, had one or two more spikes, and then crashed back down to earth. So a little bit of a different example here. This is one of the outliers where if you would have held for a couple of weeks, you could have done better. But how many times is that the case? You know, if you were into it back here for, let's call it $650, he gets called up, you're moving it for $1,000. I'm pretty happy with that. Yes, did some sell higher? Sure. You got up to 1.3K there, 1.3K there. This one topped out at 1.5. There's a 1.4, a 1.2, a 1, and a 1. I'd be pretty happy with getting the 1,000 if I was into it for $600, or maybe even less. Maybe you were into it for less than that. Were there some sales above that? Yes, but not a ton. And now you're also bringing the risk of playing time into it, or not playing time, but playing well into it. He was lightning in a bottle, struck, and was off and running, and then very quickly crashed back. And you could see in the offseason last year, he was selling for what he was selling for in season again, $600, $600, or actually a little less, 650 to 600. And as the off seasons rolled on, he's begun to slowly start to climb back up again. You could have bought here for 650, sold here for 1,000, and bought back in at 600. Remember, they let you buy them back. Let's look at another one. We're not going to mention the name. This is a former Devil Rays prospect that has had some, shall we say, issues. But I think it's still useful information for the part of his career where he was relevant. This was another one. He was hyped into the off season, moved into spring training. He started spring training on fire. He was hitting home runs left and right. All his cards went to the moon in spring training. You can see it right there. There's the moon. It went right to the moon. 6K. Now, don't necessarily pay attention to the values. This was peak pandemic craziness. Pay more attention to the movements. This was the entire lead up to the season. This is April 11th. This is all March, all those higher sales. Came back down and then immediately tanked once we got in the season. When the off season rolled around, it started building back up again throughout the off season. Spiked here early in the season in 2022 and then went down as he struggled in 2022. And then we won't talk about what happened to him after that. Right in here, I did a video. I got shredded in the comments. I said you should be selling Wander Franco. Oh, I said the name. Did I just get demonetized? I think the YouTube police are at the door. Don't let anyone know that I said the name. Tampa Bay Rays. I think I said Devil Rays earlier too. Jeez. Sorry, everybody. Back in here, I said sell this guy as fast as humanly possible, just based off of what the prices was doing and what was going to happen once the season started. If you would have exited out there, you had plenty of opportunities to buy back into him. He had to get on absolute fire to close the season for his prices to get back to what they were in the preseason. And he actually had a pretty good rookie year. So kind of keep that in mind. Let's look at another one. Once again, this one's a little bit different. Corbin Carroll. He actually got called up in late 2022. Now, he didn't have as much hype on him. I mean, he was a top prospect for the Diamondbacks, but he wasn't like, number one prospect in the league category like Chourio and Holliday and Julio and Witt. Had a very strong ending to closing out 2022. Makes the team to start 2023. Gets a little bit of a rise up, but basically stays flat all off season. For him, it actually was performance that swung the price. We get a month or so into the season. He's going nuts. His price is finally correct. And then he basically stayed flat most of the season. And it's been flat throughout the off season. Basically around a $1,000 card, give or take. So a little bit of a different example here, but this kind of shows you what happens when someone doesn't have the heat on them, the juice, the pump, the hype behind them, if you will. There was no real lead up in the prices. It took for actual player performance to move the needle on them. Another one kind of similar, Gunar Henderson. He got called up at the end of 2022, played very well. He had some hype on him heading into the season. You can see his offseason really spiked up. This one seems like a little, I don't know what went on here with this super high sale on 226. Immediately corrected back down again. The season started and expectations meet reality. He fell off a cliff, leveled out throughout May, but then as he started playing better as the season wore on, his prices rebounded and corrected. But they only got basically back up outside these couple outlier sales at around the $1,000 mark, if not higher. They got back to about where he was late in the offseason and early in the MLB preseason. He had a massive season, and that massive season brought him back to what he was selling for in spring training. $585 for his PSA 10. There's a $700 one, like I said, outside of this minor flare-up. Here's his October prices, $600. That was with them making a run of the playoffs. $600, $650, $530, $523. That was with him basically winning AL Rookie of the Year. He got back to his preseason prices after a little bit of a correction there in the spring. Just some food for thought as we head into February and March. In most cases, don't get me wrong, one of these is going to backfire eventually. But more often than not, selling into that hype of March is a better decision than holding into season. Now, every situation is going to be different. I don't know what you're into a card for, what your plan is, all that stuff. Those are all things you need to sit down and think about. If you truly like the player, buy multiples, and then you can sell off on the way up and maybe hold one in the season and kind of free ride it. But generally speaking, keep in mind how this stuff historically works. Even if the player has a really, really, really good season, it's not always enough to spike their cards up. For most of the cards that we're talking about, they are readily available. You can go back out and reacquire them if you really want it. As always, do what makes sense for you. That's all I got for you, boys and girls. We will catch you on the next one. Peace.